Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artists Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another episode of the In Focus podcast brought to you by the South Coast Artists Index. And as per usual, I will let our guests introduce themselves and spell their name. And we'll see if there's any fun and frivolity in that. And we'll continue on from there.
All right, my name is Ben Jones, or Ben Jones, depending on your preference. It's BenJones.
Okay, it's funny because all I could think of was like the really bad middle school things of when you mix up names like Ben with the last name of Dover, so it's Ben Dover, and his sister Eileen. But no, I always ask because it's amazing how some people with the simplest names you would think get the most complicated responses. Even myself, I was at a doctor's appointment. It was another as you get older, you start getting more doctors. It's like a stable of them, and I'm relatively a healthy guy, and she kept calling me Mr. Frontier, and I'm like,
oh, yeah, you should embrace that. Have a bonanza theme as you ever are.
Yeah, one of the best ones was in yeah. Yeah, one of the funniest ones was I was in Houston. One of my biggest accounts ever was for Cortals Coatings, which is the British version, so to speak, of DuPont. And they were launching a new marine division, and I had to go down to what they call paint school. And there was a young woman down there who was one of the administrative assistants and asked me for my name, and I told her, and she said she would send me more information, and I received it in the mail. And I should have kept the envelope, and maybe I've got it someplace, but she addressed it to Ron. I get this. It was the political correctness. I thought it was it was like a white Muslim thing. I was Ron 4, the number 4, TR. And I embraced it because when I had closed down my first advertising agency, which was more of a consultancy, and I opened up the second one, and that's what it was called, 4TR Advertising.
4TR.
4TR.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
Ben, could you please tell us a little about yourself? And I don't know if let's start off with your current position at the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth, and then work backwards, and then leapfrog over that and go forwards.
Sure. So my current title at UMass Dartmouth is Director of Corporate Engagement and Institutional Partnerships. And what that really translates into is that I serve as a conduit, for a bidirectional conduit for faculty and staff who are looking to engage with various external stakeholders, whether it's a nonprofit or a business, as well as funders. I mean that's a piece of my work, is the is the grant seeking piece of the work. But I really just I see my job as a door opener and a connector, and that involves working with faculty, from folks who are looking for research dollars to literally build better torpedoes, to artists at the CVPA. So it's an awesome it's an awesome gig that allows me to work with really smart motivated people across a lot of the spectrum. But I love working with my College of Visual and Performing Arts folks, and and you and I have had conversations over the months or years. It's all blended now.
It's all blended now. Yeah. I keep thinking that something was 2-3 years ago, and it was like, no, that was like last summer. So it's gotten a little nuts.
Yeah, I think if it were not for the white in my beard, I'd have no sense of time. That's a marker now.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. The current situation of the university, and we're not looking for you to reveal any secrets or whatever, but let's face it, this pandemic has caused not only alarm, which is, or fear and loathing as well, but it's caused a lot of reflection as well as to why do we do this? Why have we always done this? And why did it take this pandemic for us to evaluate or reevaluate what it is that we are in fact doing that we thought was very lovely until now?
Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah. It's a lot of fluff in there,
Ron, I'm so glad you asked that question. Because, yeah, I think some of it is just that universities are big, complex institutions, and public universities in particular have so many different entities that they're answering to, from the legislators to the administration to the unions to the students, and we're based literally in a medieval model. And there are certain advantages to that too.
You even get dressed up like that once a year too.
That's right. That's right. And I still wear a bow tie every day just to have some uniform for, what I'm doing, even though I'm in my, basement, well, I call it a basement office, but it's really just my basement with a green sheet hanging behind me. But that medieval model has some, it's not for nothing, right? That you have these, these institutions that don't change, that provide a community, to some degree. If we didn't have a university, there'd be limited opportunity for the type of intellectual exploration and curiosity that faculty get to experience here. And again, I think there are strong advantages to the tenure system for that reason. But it also means that, we do respond a little bit more slowly to, if you will, market, changes. And we do have some advantages at the university in that we've been doing online education for about, I think, about 20 years now. I mean, it's something that people don't realize, but Public Policy Center has been doing, for example, has been doing some online classes for maybe it's actually more like a decade. Again, that COVID timing is.
Yeah, when I was the interim marketing director for professional and continuing education.
Oh yes, you've been plugged into this stuff.
Right, it was like 2010, and that's when they were ramping it up. And the crew that I worked with, for other reasons, all left and went up to this place in New Hampshire
called the University of Southern New Hampshire.
Yeah, and right. Really kicked up the turf. Because I guess the administration there was a little more open and flexible, not casting any aspersions. But I always used to tell my marketing students that in academe, things go in dog years. So just to get a project to a presentation point probably takes that many years. And then that many years again to get the approvals. It's like the Edsel. It's the classic story of the Edsel. All of the models, all the surveys said, yes, we want this. But by the time they got it to market, people had moved on. But the Edsel, unfortunately, had not. So anyway.
No, so that's, I mean, to your point, we're a big complex institution. Universities are based in, medieval models. The
Yeah.
advantages to that, it makes it challenging to evolve to situations that aren't, forced upon you. I mean,
Hmm.
and I mean, as you know, I mean, we started doing online continuing education. Some departments, again, like the public policy center, really, or the it's not the public policy center, but the um, public policy, department really embraced that, and they've been doing that, really well for years. But it's been uneven, and part of the part of the reality for our students too is that they're not always coming from the best academic preparations, and being on campus is, I think, a more critical part of the college experience for UMass Dartmouth students than kids who are going to, who have the background and the finances to get into the more selective and, better resourced, colleges. I just had a bunch of conversations with, first year students, and, it just made me think of my own experience that, I mean, I was out of my element completely in college. And, thank goodness I ended up in like the smart kids dorm in in college, because, they all knew it was like, okay, it's time to register for classes. And that's the kind of stuff that if you're a first gen, college kid, and you're doing, you're having your entire first year college experience be online,
Hmm.
like, there's no one on the floor in your dorm who's like the hen or the rooster, sort of reminding people to do things. So, the I think this is forcing the university to, adapt a hybrid model, which makes education more accessible for more people. But I think there's going to continue to be a really important role for, UMass Dartmouth in, providing a residential college experience. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's an important niche that I hadn't really thought about, before, that, for our students, being in residence, makes a difference for them in terms of their academic success and the types of support networks that they develop, amongst themselves.
Well, two things. One of them, one of them is Alvin Toffler, who wrote Future Shock nearly 50 years ago. He pretty much hit the nail on the head on every single point that he made in that book of his. The one thing that he was way off on, in fact, just some of the things that he discussed about education are just starting to bubble up. And that would be a conversation for another day. But there's a lot to be said about the experience having as much value as the academics. Look, if you go to Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Princeton, that's wonderful. Okay, that'll open a lot of doors for you. But what a lot of people don't realize is the acquaintances, the friendships, the connections, the networking that has been created during those 4 years are far more valuable than your diploma, because those people will open doors for you.
Oh yeah.
You could be
Well,
the kid from the other side of the tracks and go to a private school and do amazingly well, because people are people. People like doing business with people that they know.
well, there's a great book by, I think it's Alan Dershowitz, but he was an English professor at Yale, and the title of the book is Excellent Sheep. And the basic thesis is that we've become I'm going to use the term neoliberal, right? We're so performance oriented at particularly among the the more moneyed elite classes, or those who are aspire to being part of the moneyed elite classes, that students are cultivated at unbelievably early ages to get on the track, to get into the right preschool, to get into the right kindergarten, to get into the right grade school, to get into the right high school, so that they can get into an elite university and then get an elite job at
an elite company.
On Wall Street. And
yeah,
and that's something that's emerged fairly recently and when I say fairly recently, within the last couple decades, but he and the title of the book comes from, because he taught at Yale, and he had conversations with his students about this, who are these unbelievably talented, enthusiastic kids. And one of his students commented that, so basically what you're saying is that we're excellent sheep because they've been guided all along the way towards this path that leads to being part of the intelligentsia in the brave new world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that sticks in my mind from that, though, is that at Yale, the English department alone, just the English department, every year gives out $300,000 in writing awards. $300,000 a year, and just in writing awards.
Mm-hmm.
So that you're already set, right? If you're able to get into a selective university, you're set. And I couldn't help but read that and think, man, if we had an additional $300,000 in bridge aid, because the thing that happens to our students all the time is that their car breaks down and they can't get to work, so they can't pay their bills. They're frequently contributing to their family's bills, and so they have to defer their education. And once you defer your education, it's tough. It's tough to get on with it. And we have, well, and I mean, you're aware, we have 1,000 otherwise academically qualified students a year who are unable to re-enroll because of an average of $3,000 in past due balances. And we're a state university. Like, you don't get as like bargain as we are, but there's something fundamentally wrong with the way our current society operates. And I think it's particularly problematic in Massachusetts, where you have so many great private universities that people don't understand the value of investing in public higher education. So
well, let's roll back a little bit more in time and start to turn this towards the arts. When I went to what was then SMU, Southeastern Massachusetts University, my entire 4 years cost me $2,400. Okay, $600 a year, and there still was, it was a commuter college. But the amazing thing to me about the university, it was SMTI, was that textile.
You're old, man.
Yeah, I'm really.
SMTI,
Southeastern Massachusetts Technological Institute.
Looking good.
And you had 2 textile mills in competing textile towns. Actually, one town, Fall River, was a spinning city, and New Bedford was a weaving city. And they got together, and I would love to have been a fly on a wall, because to me that was like a moon landing when they decided, hey, there's this big plot of land off of Old Westport Road, and it's like 80 acres or something, or it's probably even more. I think
No, it's 710 acres.
All
man.
right, that's right. It's
710
almost as big as Disney World's original footprint. And I should remember that, because Chancellor Johnson, man, what a great presentation he gave. But anyway, and then let's hire a world-class architect, the hottest guy on the planet right now.
Right.
And that momentum was phenomenal. Now, back then, we had this culture, and Bill Clinton had that little thing on his desk that used to say, it's the economy, stupid. I'd love to have one made up that says it's the culture, stupid, because it really comes down to that. We had a culture of personality back in those days, and anything that was moving and shaking was due to an individual on campus. Angus Bailey for theater arts.
Right.
Okay. Howard Glasser for the Eisteddfod, which was like one of the biggest ones, and the British theater that he had. I'm blanking out; it's not the real term on the British theater, but Tony Barron and those guys. Okay, there was I worked for the Colberts, Joseph and Jacqueline Colbert, for the opera department, and because of them, I worked for Boris Goldovsky of the Metropolitan Opera.
We had an opera department here.
We had yeah, really, we did. So we had this incredible vivacity, and it was a commuter college. And somehow, things changed a bit. Now, when I was there, there was no CVPA, no College of Visual and Performing Arts. There was the art department. And the art department was founded, and I'm hoping I'm correct, and I always ask people, hey, if I'm wrong, please let me know. My mentor and instructor, Edward Tonieri, who was also the lead developer for acrylic paints, for artists acrylic paints, worked for DuPont and for Beaucourt artist paints, was an instructor at the Swain School of Design, which had been around for like a gazillion years.
Right.
I believe he may have been a president for a short amount of time, or an interim president, because they went through them like they went through them very quickly. But he came over, and I'd love to find out that the exact history. He came over to UMass, SMTI, and founded the art department. And from there, we had this incredible force. And what still exists of that force?
I missed that last piece. That last piece of your question.
All right. What still exists of that force that we had? That force of culture, that drive, that look, the education I received had to have been good enough for me to receive a full ride scholarship and become instructor of record. I actually made money going to graduate school.
Yeah.
In fact, I think if I had paid out of pocket for my SMU education, I made that money back plus some.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about that's how things were at that point in time.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, I think that still exists. I think it's, if you look at our faculty and our faculty connections and our faculty passion, I think that spark, still exists, honestly. Like the number of faculty who, take, like true diamonds in the rough, again, because, this ain't Brown, this ain't Princeton, these are kids who are, using UMass Dartmouth as a ladder, largely to economic, success. It's like
Mhm.
they're in it to win it. I think that part of the challenge for us as a university in terms of figuring out, what we want to be and where we want to fit is that there's such enormous pressure to, bump up your enrollment, right? So, and and there's no, it's easy to be it's, hindsight is 2020, right? But, the reality is that the college age population we've known was going to be, in decline for years. Like
Mhm.
we have, statistics about that. You drinking Sagres?
Mhm.
Nice.
We'll
Oh,
touch a home, so to speak.
I have some coral from Madeira in my
Oh, yeah, another good one.
but um I think everyone, and I mean, and we're going to see the consequences of this pretty quickly as a result of COVID-19. Like all of the universities who thought, well, I'm going to buck the trend. I'm not going to, be a consequence of the statistics of birth rates and, the cost of higher ed. And, and frankly, I mean, we have to think about, where our relevance is in, in all of this as well. But I think that, looking back into um, the writing was on the wall in terms of what, what was realistic in terms of enrollment. And, we doubled down on, making enrollment, you know, the most important statistic. And it is an important metric, right? But, persistence to graduation is an important, statistic as well. And, employment, grad school admission rates are an important statistic. And I just think that, like a lot of colleges and universities, we didn't look at this in a balanced way. And we didn't look into, what our core mission is within the marketplace. And I do believe that I think, research is an essential component of being a university, right? You want to advance knowledge, right? So that's a key component of, what we do. But I think it's also important to recognize, where we fit into, the regional, research university, economy, and what we mean to the, region, and also whether or not we're going to successfully scaffold the students who need some additional support to succeed, and what that costs.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that those are tough decisions. And I frankly, I think the Commonwealth needs to have a more, balanced perspective on the importance of public higher education, overall in the state.
Well, let's move over to the arts because the arts have always been problematic. The the parents who have just been told by their son or daughter that they're gonna pursue a BFA, and you can see the blood drain out of their parents' faces. And the
Hey,
first.
I was an anthropology major, man. So
um, you can always dig us some work, but when you tell your parents you're going to be an artist, and they just go blank for a second, and then the comeback is, but how will you make a life? How will you make a living? And let's go to this phenomena of the creative community here, which is we've been doing these podcasts for quite a while. We've got about 60 in the can. I think we released 55. There's another 5 on, coming online, so to speak. That are being produced, scheduled for production. And the Hatch Street Studios alone has 65 artists. So basically, we've just scratched the surface because there are artists scattered all over the place.
Right. Right.
And this has become almost a mecca for the artists. And there are some who are thriving. There are some who are surviving. And that, runs in various levels. But it's still this incredible vibrancy because going back to, let's just say 1985, it was like bupkis, nothing, zero, zip, zilch, nada going on, except for that one light up the hill at Gallery X.
Well, and when did Swain become part of SMU?
I think it was around 89.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, and part of my attraction to, I mean, I tried to, write this in my bio thing, but
Mhm.
there are only 650 characters.
Yeah.
It was like, oh,
Yeah, we
man.
had to because there were a couple of people. It's like, oh my God.
No, I would have been one of them. I would have been one of them. So,
yeah.
But I mean, the and I don't, I think that Florida's idea, of the creative economy is to some degree a mirage, right? Because
Mhm.
he includes like accountants and attorneys, they're creatives, they're solving,
Mhm.
legal problems and number problems. But
Right.
when you look at vibrant communities, arts is always at the center of making that happen. Arts is always at the center of making that happen. And I think even before I moved to New Bedford, I lived in Providence, which, is its own like little like mini, Mecca, right? Where there's this incredible convergence of the entrepreneurial and activist and, artist community, because the people who end up in Providence are people who are done with the bullshit of, New York and, Boston. And they just are like, man, I want to have a good quality of life. And I want to, interact with creative and authentic people. So there's this amazing community and intersection of communities. And when I was in Providence, though, that community was aware of what was going on in New Bedford. And what was going on in New Bedford, and again, like going back on the, in the arts scene, the Star Store, just as an example, became, if you will, a mini Greenwich Village, right? You have all of these artists who are like, oh my God, I can get unbelievably cheap space with great light and, do my art. And you look at, No Problemo, which my understanding was, part of like the skater community, right? Who were like, oh my, these streets are all broken up. I can come down and, and skate.
Yeah.
So it takes the, it takes imagination for transformation, in general, but the, having a robust culture of creatives, if broadly, not like, lawyers and accountants,
Mm-hmm.
but artists is what makes places, for lack of a better term, like, they're cool to live in, right? And that's, I mean, I tell you, conversations I've had with, people involved in New Bedford and economic development, like Derek Santos, like he gets that if you, to the extent that you're able to provide resources and support for the, creative community, that's going to have unbelievable return on investment in terms of, attracting people who are looking for a quality of life. And part of the reality in this economy too is that we're not going to get a GM plant I lived in Providence during the whole 38 studios, debacle, right?
Yeah.
And when I think of when I think of I forget the amount, I could Google it, but I would be,
I think it was 9 million for some reason. It just popped in my head. I
oh
don't know. I could be
no,
off. Was it way more than that?
no. Oh yeah, no, I think it was like 70 million.
Wow.
And when I think of that money and what that would have meant for micro businesses in Providence and the return on investment on that. But when you're operating from a manufacturing mentality, like, you just don't get what's going to make things hum. And I think the secret to success in a Providence or a New Bedford is we need to attract more of the 8 to 12 person information based economy companies who are interested in the quality of life that a community like New Bedford can offer. And that quality of life is intrinsically and inextricably linked to the artist community.
Yeah.
in town.
One of those things is neighborhoods, which in contrast between Fall River and New Bedford, Fall River is a city of neighborhoods where New Bedford isn't. I mean, you say, where are you from? North End. Where are you from? South End. Okay. And Fall River, it's different. Up to Flint. Okay. Or Flint Village. Maple Leaf. I'm losing it. Maple Leaf Park or Maple Leaf section. I mean, there's like sections. They're villages. And each one of them has its almost like micro culture. And, after having lived in Europe for a year and being able to not drive or own a car or wanting to, and being able to kick the can, so to speak, from cafe to cafe to cafe. And all these small micro businesses are all surviving, and they're all, it all depends on what you think of survival. Some of them are thriving, some of them, and survival is they pay their bills. They have a good quality of life. They have employees. They live in a very beautiful place,
Right. And they can coach the little league team or the soccer team.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that, I mean, and relating this back to the arts too, I think that, and again, I mean, I live in academia, right? So we use the term like neoliberal, but I think a better way of thinking of it is like the Michael Jordan phenomenon, right? That, if you are not a superstar, then, fuck all. Why are you playing basketball?
Exactly.
Right. And it's the same thing with the arts. Like, we've become this idea, the idea that if you're not a superstar, why bother? If you're not, making a, living, whatever that means in the arts, that somehow you've failed. Well, if you're a creative and you're able to figure out a way to, pay your bills, whatever you're doing, and still pursuing your art, that's a victory.
It is.
That's a victory. I mean, that's part. And I think that's part of the American, and when I say American, I mean, the United States experience, that, we judge success by your financial affluence, as opposed to what you are contributing to, what your, quality of life is. And there's so many people who are locked into unbelievably, horrific, nasty, brutish lives at all levels, because there's so many people. And, I know some of these people, because I went to a rich kid's school. I was a poor kid, but I went to a rich kid's school, And these, these people who are locked into this being part of the, affluence machine, who are making $500,000 a year, and if they missed a paycheck, they'd be screwed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like their kids wouldn't be able to go to their elite preschool. Although I'm older now, so it's not preschool. Their kids they wouldn't be able to pay their tuition bills, and there's no, they're not, they're not doing, and again, relating this just back to the general, like, if you don't have a creative outlet, right? That's having a creative outlet is part of having an examined life. You're cultivating something that's, beyond the, transactional day to day
Yeah.
towards a more, transcendent sense of, of where you are. But, but with the arts, there's so many ways that people can be, engaged and, continuing to be creative, but, and, and whatever, it's kind of a trope, right? That,
Yeah.
a kindergartner is going to be like, I'm a great artist. And then,
Mhm.
by 5th grade, people are like, I don't know how to draw,
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something wrong with that equation.
Well, there is, and two things that you let me up on. One of them is we definitely need even if it's a regional visual and performing arts high school, because there are kids who are just not cut out for the academic rigor of the read, remember, regurgitate. If they don't have academic memory, and that's a whole nother story about, I had those kids. They had academic memory to, blah blah blah, but they couldn't figure out how to unfold a bag, So a visual and performing high school, even if, like I said, it was on a regional basis, would be a really wonderful thing. Another thing too that I find that we don't really do here. When I was working for the Brazilian Ministry of Tourism, I was doing translation work and writing little blurbs. It was all SEO kind of stuff, and nearly every single one of the people, when I was dealing with the artists themselves, highlighting artists, he received the Bolsa, he received his scholarship, and it was the estrangeiro. So everybody who went to a college, undergraduate school, in their senior year, they received a stipend, a scholarship, and they went off across the sea to another country to finish their education there, their senior year there. Which, imagine that. I mean, just opening up the mind is just absolutely phenomenal. And then there's other things that still don't quite work. We still have these silos. And Godwin Araguzo, God rest his soul, my friend and colleague in the College of Charlton College of Business.
CCB, yeah.
He and I were trying to create what we were calling a bridge program between the Charlton College of Business and CVPA, so that the CVPA students could take advantage of entrepreneurial courses, which are really, really, really important for the fine arts and the visual performing arts. And on the other side, that the business students could now get a visual education, because business is, you're going to make a presentation. Where's your deck? Where's your PowerPoint presentation? And let me tell you, if you've ever walked by some of the classrooms and seen some of the instructors, just to use them as scapegoats, it's like, oh my God, how could you have 25 lines of type on one slide?
Those people are 20 years behind.
Yes.
Like, that's where that's where the 2 decades come in.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
so,
it's visual communications.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really, really, really important because, well, don't forget, a few years ago, they were bandying about that empaths were now, in big demand, those people with emotional skills. And, so this whole thing of academia is actually, I hate to use the term a big lie, but there are so many people who, if we were to do a survey, how many people are actually utilizing their degree? And many of those people somehow found another way. Yes, college experience was very important. What they learned was not wasted. but they ended up doing something else. And in some cases, they ended up doing something that they never realized would make them happier than the goal that they were out trying to reach, you know? And I'm getting all this set up for your job, you know, what you do at the university. And the final thing is, it's always the sticky wicket around here, is the Swain School. And you knew that was coming. And I've tried to explain to the Swain students, because they feel like they've been marooned on an island or something.
Well, in Boston University, the Boston University artisanry program, it goes back, man.
Yeah, it goes back, exactly. And even with us, the SMUers, you know, class of 75, we were discussing this. We really had no physical place. I was doing a lecture, you know, one of my marketing classes in what we referred to as Group 1 back then, which they call LARTS now, Liberal Arts Building. And I said, this is like vaguely familiar about this room. It's like, oh my God, it's a senior painting studio, you know? So we really had no place, but the new building, which was a hole in the ground when we left, they just broke ground for it, really has nothing there. And then they changed the name. So all these things are, you know, these soft things are very, very important. They're cultural. And
oh yeah.
And there's, you know, one of the things I've been trying to do is create this bridge, or try to illustrate, and hopefully I'm right, that there's more of a connectiveness between the Swain students and the SMU students, because, you know, we had faculty that played both sides of the borderline, you know, of time, the timeline, rather. And now, for someone in your position, you know, who is trying to get people to invest in the university or specific portions of it, basically, if there's no emotional attachment, they're just gonna like, nah, not interested.
Yeah, I mean, and I tell you that the you know, the current dean of CVPA,
Lawrence Jeffers, is it?
Jenkins. Yeah, like he gets a Swain, you know, connection. And I mean, you know, we're in the midst of COVID, but I think he's actually named you know, a gallery, like the Swain Gallery,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to draw those connections. And you know, I mean, you know, hopefully this broadcast, you know, won't be viewed by, you know, my boss, right? Although actually he would probably agree. But you know, we've had a very, you know, if you think of fundraising and the relationships with, you know, the institution, right? It's a pyramid, you know, and at the very top are people who've ended up being, you know, enormously, you know, financially successful. And you know, for us, that typically means that they decide to leave a legacy, you know, when they die. You know, in philanthropy, in higher ed philanthropy, you're looking at 5 generations of college graduates, you know, before there's sort of an amassed, you know, level of affluence and philanthropic tradition, where people are actually, you know, I have a lot of money, I've got to give it away. Not just to family members. I mean, a lot of the you know, wealthiest, you know, graduates from UMass Dartmouth are supporting their first generation, you know, family members who are going to college. Like, that's their philanthropy, and that's really important. But the base of building those relationships are your alumni relations, and just being in, you know, you know, ongoing communication, and you know, also the, you know, mobilizing the pockets of you know, like the class of 75 and your affinity for you know, folks who are from that class. And you know, they're like pockets of you know, Willoughby Elliott, you know, Bill Elliott, you know, fans. And you gotta connect with that base of people, you know, where they are. And it's not, and it's also not just about money. It's about, hey, this this is a great place to come and learn. Like, you're still going to learn. And some people poo poo this, but man, like CVPA grads, they effing know how to line draw.
Hmm.
It's not, completely, abstract. And I can, and I hope I don't like make people mad, like RISD grads. But
Well, no, there's also the same thing there. If RISD got absorbed into PC or to Brown or something like that, there would be the same flailing, gnashing of teeth and so on and so forth.
but I'm just thinking. I mean, because I did web design and
Hmm.
development, not design, but I mean, I
Hmm.
ran,
Right.
web development
Development. Yeah. Yeah.
for a long time. I worked with a lot of creatives, and I mean, there is like one RISD, grad who I still refer business to, because I'm not doing that business anymore. But
Hmm.
the people I most preferred working with, still, and I still give more referrals to this, Erin Murphy
Hmm.
specifically, is a CVPA grad,
Hmm.
because she understands that you're applying design to business needs. It's not, you're not going for the biennial,
Hmm. Yeah.
with your web
Exactly.
design. Like, you have
Yeah.
to like design within specific parameters. And CVPA grads, I think, get that. And but to your point, we need, and this comes up a lot, right? That we need to have some more tools for CVPA students. Like, how do you make money, doing doing the work. And Providence seems to have, from my observation and being there, like, seems to have a fairly robust informal network, particularly with with AS220, and to help artists figure out how to do it. I think we're doing an okay job, you know, obviously in New Bedford, because we have a burgeoning downtown.
Hmm.
And but I think there's a, to your point, I think there's a role for the university to merge that, the CVPA and CCB,
Hmm.
and help make our, and I mean, as you probably know, I mean, design thinking is, remains all the rage, because it's freaking smart.
Yeah. It is.
Like
It
how,
is.
how do you come up with, ideas to solve problems? And, artists are, are just intrinsically makers too. So there's that whole, engineering connection. And, there's with, Hildreth Hall, Idea Studio, there remains some integration between College of Engineering and CVPA. I think we're going to see more of that, particularly with Dean Lawrence Jenkins at
Hmm.
CVPA. And I'm not like I'm
I
not
know. I know.
PRing this. I think
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they're like invested in
Yeah.
making that happen. And we've got we have a new dean in CCB, John Williams, who comes from University of New Orleans,
Hmm.
who comes from I mean, he's a creative, he's a creative person. I think there may be some opportunities to push this along in terms of having a more integrated, um I don't want, and it's not even curriculum, it's integrated, it's convergent relationships.
Yeah, it's tearing down those silos that have always been problematic. Is another question. We've got about 10 minutes. I'm going to start winding it down towards the end of the path here. But um, how many of our colleges have schools of at the university?
Well, there's the law school,
Hmm.
there's the School of Marine Science and Technology, but then there's the
But I'm
College of
talking,
Arts and Science.
yeah, are they attached to a college?
They're their own. I
They're
mean,
their own standalone. Okay, but it's not
yeah.
like I'm trying to think of the classic like Kellogg or Wharton.
Mm.
I mean, Okay, it's the Wharton School, but the Wharton School's in the College of Business. And I'm wondering why they never use that model. For example, and just let's keep it to CVPA. What is the biggest club that we've got in the CVPA arsenal? You know, the biggest money maker, the biggest eyeball grabber. Let's go back to opera. Okay, when the opera department existed. Imagine, I mean, of all places, Southeastern Massachusetts University having this killer opera department that's 50 years old, that didn't die with its founders, that attracts people to the university specifically because of that, the school, the Colbert School of Opera, for example. It's just a crazy idea, because, you know, okay, you're an adjacent artist, you know, you're involved in the community, you have the appreciation and so on and so forth. Your job requires creativity. Your job requires communicating with creative people, which some people can't do whatsoever. They just don't. They have a prejudice against them to begin with. Um, um, and you know, one of the top things on the university's agenda is not just to survive, but to thrive, to create a not a legacy, but you know, to in perpetuity, you know, to exist in perpetuity.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, you may know this, but you know, Lawrence Jenkins is trying to actually make, like, you know, to make performing arts again part of CVPA. I mean, we still have a music program, but he is working diligently and in a smart way too, right?
Mhm.
Because, you know, Bristol Community College has a theater arts program. Currently, they have an articulation agreement with Rhode Island College for people who want to pursue a, you know, BFA
Mhm.
in you know, theater arts. Well, we should be doing that.
Mhm.
And you know, he, like, you know, he recognizes it. And
Yeah.
you know, I don't know if you've seen, you know, some of the performances by, what is it, 5 cent theater or 5 penny,
I think
but
it's the 5 penny. Yeah.
like,
It's
you can
phenomenal stuff.
you could edit the right name in,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah, that's all right.
But
People know this isn't fancy stuff.
like, we have so many. I mean, I went to see performance of Heather's, you know, for example,
Mhm.
and the lead vocalist was like, blew my mind,
Yep.
right? Blew my mind. And the beauty of it too is that you had this, you know, lead vocalist who is, I don't know what she's doing now, but you know, she could be at, you know, IU, opera program,
Mhm.
or, you know, musical theater program. And but you also had people who were just, you know, who are pretty pitchy, right? So it's this whole, like, but it's performance,
Well,
and we need to have
imagine
we need to have more of that.
we do. I mean, we have it right under our nose. Imagine bringing Armin Marchand and George Charbonneau, who have
Oh,
devoted their lives to it in the festival theater. Why is that? It's not even a satellite. Okay, it's in another galaxy, so to speak. I mean, they're getting up there in age, as we all are. But imagine saying, "Hey, you will live forever. We're bringing, you know, the Charbonneau, Marchand, and they probably argue about which got you know, who's got the
hey, you know
you know,
what? They would be
bring
happy.
them in.
They would be happy. You know,
Yeah,
having it named in their mentor's name. They could have the Bailey Festival Theater at UMass
yeah,
Dartmouth.
yeah,
I mean, they talk about that every
yeah.
time they've talked about, you know, their legacy. It was
Right.
Alvin Bailey, and
Yeah,
that gets back to your point. Like, how can we take those embers,
yeah.
that faculty and staff that, you know, still have such a commitment to, the little, university that could,
Mhm.
and and try to elevate that. And, I I'm still here. I remain hopeful
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah. I mean,
those possibilities
yeah.
um, exist, and I try to.
Well, you're lighting candles. I mean, and sometimes you just light that one. I mean, and then somebody, it'll catch onto something else, or someone will see you do that. Um, but for example, with the whole Swain thing, I've asked several artists who have been on this show to explain the creative community, and the Fall River is now, I hate to say, just coming into their own, but they're in an embryonic state right now. They're doing a lot of things. You could even probably say they're playing a lot of catch up. But a lot of people said, look, the creative community in New Bedford is what it is because of one single thing, and that's the Swain School of Design. Because we had a gem in this town that brought people, it just didn't foster the locals. It brought people from all over the United States. And that is, it's commerce. It's, well, you're a beekeeper. It's cross pollination. And I'm, I can't wipe out the marketing advertising drive that I had to feed and water for 40 years. Even though I was more of a creative than anything else in that business, and it's a very small market, but I survived, and wishing all the time that I was painting instead. But
You are painting with words.
I was painting with words. Yeah, I was getting people to buy stuff that they absolutely didn't need. And
The many layers of Ron.
yeah,
Frontier. Ron Frontier.
Frontier, yeah. And the point is like the creative community where it is now, where is it going? Does it have more? Where is it in its life cycle? There's the four stages, the initial stage, the growth stage, the maturity stage, and then the stage we all want to stay away from, which is decline. But the pandemic, in some bizarre way, is had restaurateurs who probably wish they could survive in the similar fashion. Because there are artists who, again, only from anecdotal, information, artists who never could get into galleries or had the wherewithal to get into galleries, that any sales that they did with on their own, they were sporadic. Then there were the people who were represented by galleries and they were doing quite well. And because of the pandemic, it's the weirdest thing that so many of these artists are saying, hey, I'm getting people giving me commissions. They went online, they found me, or on Facebook. They offer me a commission, they're buying my work. And then you got the guys who are doing very well. And guys, I use that as a, multi-purpose phrase, are saying, all my galleries have dried up. They've closed down. I don't know where it's going to go from here.
Well, I mean, so here's my,
Yeah, in fact, let's do this as your adieu.
Adieu.
Your adieu, yeah.
Yeah, so in my dream of dreams, right?
Mhm.
That, and this relates to some of the conversation we've had about, what's the impact of COVID-19 on, funding for the arts. And in my dream of dreams, right, some of the, emergency, aid that's come up for artists becomes permanent. I think it's like 0.044% of, the federal budget that, goes towards the arts. It's less than $200 million a year, right? You know how much a B-2 bomber costs, stealth bomber costs? $2 billion. Like, we were just like, we're going to build like one less B-2 bomber. We could increase the funding for the arts and artists by, tenfold, right?
Mhm.
And that's just, basic math there, right? For a huge, ROI in terms of, increased economic activity and quality of life, et cetera. And, the other piece that, not to get, too political, but, you know, like I feel incredibly lucky, right, that I have good health insurance. But, I have friends and, including a dear friend in St. Louis who I used to hire to do like odd jobs
Mhm.
and like, and like worry about the fact that he wasn't like a bonded worker, right?
Mhm.
Because, if he got injured, but man, if we had, universal health care in this country and universal basic income, imagine what the arts would be like in this country. Imagine
Okay.
what it would be like for people to take, risks and not be subject to the, vagaries of, oh, well, suddenly you're a superstar artist. Well, why should that be the key metric? Shouldn't you be able to be engaged in
Mhm.
creative pursuits and, be able to put food on the table and not worry if, you break your leg or God forbid, test positive for, COVID-19
Mhm.
because you got to work at a, restaurant that should probably have better safety procedures in place.
All right. The final question and the wrap up. And um, y- I, I'm. You will be back. I'm not going to give you the option. You will be back.
Well,
And
I love your point in the Don Burton interview where like the
yeah,
hallway conversations are where it all happens. Like I think most of our like long conversations have been like in the the old commuter cafe or whatever.
exactly, exactly. And that's what it is because it always seems like, especially with these good conversations, that we get to the peak and then that's it, shut off the lights. But really, this is a continuing
We
thing
should all
about
be so lucky.
yeah, with the creative community. If you had, and this is an old Barbara Walters kind of question, if you had a magic wand, and we're going to focus just on the creative community right now. If you had a magic wand and you only had one wish, what would you do with that wand?
I mean, so I'm going to give props to first of all to, and I'm being a marketer here, right? But I'm
Hmm.
going to give props to some of the work that the South Coast Community Foundation is doing with the Bar Foundation money
Hmm.
to, engage, underrepresented communities in the, creative economy, and not the Florida creative economy, but, supporting, groups who are doing, really, you know, cool, work. But, you know, I, if I were to wave my magic wand,
Hmm.
like, and I'm just going to be like, cause I'm a fundraiser guy, I'm a money guy, right?
Hmm.
But like Massachusetts ranks, I think around fifth, which is pretty good. We're like number one in New England, but we spend, I think, a little under $3 per capita, as a state on the arts. Minnesota, they're spending 791.
And
Let's get
they've got a huge jazz component community that nobody really, even outside of, if you're not a musician, really knows what's going on there, right?
well,
Was it
and that's
Minneapolis? It's like
yeah.
huge, right?
Well, I mean, I tell you what, like I continue to be, and we're getting a little off track here
Yeah,
to
yeah,
like my adieu,
yeah.
but
You gotta wrap the yeah, yeah,
yeah, but you know what, aspirationally,
yeah.
let's get to $8 per
Yeah.
capita
We need bumper stickers
for the arts
for the arts.
in
Yeah,
Massachusetts.
yeah. That's
I
definitely
wasn't like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but
yeah. We need it. Yeah,
Massachusetts.
yeah. We need the bumper stickers.
Yeah, but I mean, if we did that, like, I mean, that would be transformative,
Yeah.
and it would solidify our economy because, all of these information, based companies, they would want to live here because they'd be like, oh man, I can go to the gallery,
The
I can walk
theaters.
around, I
Yeah.
can go to the theater, I can go to a black box theater, like all,
Yeah.
there's,
Yeah.
there's a place in, neoliberal, extractive capitalism, even
That's for sure. That's for sure.
for the arts, that provides ROI.
Yeah.
And
Ben
you know what?
Jones.
And one less B2 bomber.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
increase federal
Yeah.
funding for the arts tenfold.
Yeah. 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 Ben Jones, thank you so much. You definitely. Well, I want to contact you this week or next week for some off the record stuff. But thank you so much.
There's no off the record.
Thank you so much. And I do want to have you come back, and hopefully some of this conversation has percolated because the next time you come back on, I'd be very curious to hear what you have to say about it. So with that in mind, once again, this is Ron Fortier saying thank you and goodbye to our guest, Ben Jones. And we'll see you next time on the In Focus podcast on the South Coast Artist Index. Have a great day and a great evening, or whatever time of day it is that you're listening to this. And remember, be kind to each other. That's what we really need out there. Thanks.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Be the artist you believe you are, and let's take care of each other out there.